So when you first open up Maya, you'll be presented with something along something that looks a little bit like this. So we'll go over just briefly. We've got our main scene area here. I like to have my outliner, and if you don't see that, we can come to Windows, and then we can go to Outliner, which will make that appear here on the left-hand side. And on the right, I've got my channel box, attribute editor, modeling toolkit, and UV editor toolkit. Don't worry about the UV one yet. We'll come over that later when we bring that in. And I also have mine tabbed onto the right. So it's essentially these icons here. So if I go over these, it will sort of tag these open. I don't want the tools one up. And it will kind of bring these open here. Now I've got them tabbed along the side. Now, if I was to right click and go tab direction, I have mine on the right, which enables them to come down the right hand side. And I find this just the nicest way for me to personally work. So I'm going to try and leave everything pretty much as default as much as possible to go through this. And I'm not really going to go over too much of the interface because there's plenty of information out there. I'm just going to go through my process and the tools in which I use as we go. So what we want to do when we first come in is create ourselves a new project by going to File, come down to Create, into the project area, and where it says Project Window, we can open this up, create a new project, and this will be my radio project. And then you have it set to wherever you need to set in the location. So in my case, I've got a 2020 game app projects folder, and then I'm going to accept, and it will automatically generate this file system for me, which is great. The next thing that I like to do is right click on this icon here, which is my grid, go to my grid options, and then just as a rule of thumb default, I'll do 1,000, 110 for my subdivisions, and then this will match up with the grid that is within Unreal Engine, for example, so it makes it easier, and you know that it's working on a better scale because the default grid is tiny. I also like to just edit my axes colors, so I have it as a sky blue, and then I have my grid lines and numbers as a light gray, just one up on the notch, and then I'll also turn on my grid numbers. I like these, so I'm going to hit apply and close. You see my grid has increased quite to a much larger size, and now you can see that I've got my divisions. So I've got 0 to 100 because that's how I've got it. If I open up my grid options again, so the entire width, so this here is 0, okay, on my axis points. So and I've got it to 1,000. So it's 0 to 1,000 in the U direction, in the X direction. And then I've got 0 to 1,000 in the Z, and it will also be kind of 0 to 1,000 in the Y, but that's not visible, doesn't matter. So it's 0 to 1,000, and then obviously if we go backwards, it's negative 1,000 and so forth. So that's how the grid works. And then I've got my subdivisions, which is the dark gray lines now every 10. So every 10, and then every 1,000 is a light gray. So it just helps me to break up my grid and my scene and make it a little bit easier visually for me to be able to go from and start sort of work. Now for my radio, my prop, I'm not going to need a grid this size. So I may wish to come in and grid options and just reduce this somewhat. So I might just say, okay, that's okay. Or maybe I just want it to be 200 and then hit apply and close. And then I've just reduced my grid and I've kept it to that kind of scale at the moment. But now it's just visual kind of preferences. But that's how I like to set my grid up anyway. So now we've got our Maya project set up and our grid set up. We are ready to go.